Okay, so, David, you have been, you wanted me to see a video of a young man by the age of about 15, I guess,
Yep.
by the name of Bamjan,
Yep.
who is a young yogi living in India, who's
Nepal.
who's been meditating in the hollow of a tree for about 3 years now. And supposedly he hasn't eaten any food or drunk any water in that whole 3 years' time.
It's a little more complex than that. Let's just talk about the first 6 months, because he's gone to some other places now. He's been meditating. He tends to meditate, as far as we're aware, people who have been investigating him, for 2 to 3 months at a time without moving, and then he'll move on to some other location. He'll do his tapas or his yoga in some other place. He's said it gets too crowded. It distracts him from his meditation.
Okay. Well, one of the interesting... I've heard about this young man before.
Oh, you have? Really?
Yeah. And the reference I heard about him, which was, I think, a couple of years ago, was that he was like a young... In fact, people were thinking that he was Babaji.
Really?
So, in the SRF context, we have basically a man who's supposedly 1,000 years old who looks like a teenager. And I'm pretty sure this is the same guy. Looking at the video that I saw, first of all, they say that he didn't move at all in the 4 hours that they videoed him, but I saw him move in the video.
Well, he moves slightly like this, but he doesn't make large gesticulations.
Right, no, he didn't get up and walk away, but he did move. He adjusted his posture, which is fine. I don't have a problem with contemplatives adjusting their posture. Now, it's pretty fantastic to believe that somebody can sit and meditate continuously, even for a couple of hours, let alone for a couple
They
of
filmed him
months.
for 96 hours, and they showed that documentation later, and he didn't move during the whole time. Except one comment they made, which was interesting later on in the documentary, was after about 48 hours, he seemed to be fidgeting a little bit, and one of the nutritionists or cardiologists commented that after 36 to 48 hours of being essentially motionless, not moving your legs, for example, which he wasn't apparently moving his legs, that you would get pressure sores in your legs, like if you're in a hospital, if you're in your bed, you need to move. So he started fidgeting a little bit after 36 to 48 hours, according to this cardiologist, and she believed that was to relieve pressure and shift his center of balance slightly so that he wouldn't have necrotic tissue or dead flesh or something like that.
Seems to make sense to me. Why not move?
Right.
Now, if we think about earlier today, we were talking about the major mystics of the world, which would be Teresa of Avila, John of the Cross, Rumi, Kabir, Patanjali, and Siddhartha Gautama, and we could throw in maybe Muhammad and Jesus if we want to in that group. Now, the thing is if we look at those major mystics, they made a major contribution to the religions that they existed in. They're widely accepted, really without doubt, as fully enlightened beings, and I believe that their description of their gnosis is very similar from mystic to mystic to mystic, and not one of those mystics claimed that they sat even probably for a day in meditation. Most of them moved around for a while.
Didn't Buddha claim to have sat for 7 days before his enlightenment?
Well, that's a claim that is in Buddhism, but it's not in the Discourses of the Buddha. I've read the first 3 volumes cover to cover. It's not in there that he didn't move. The other thing is while I really believe that the vast majority of the suttas in the Pali Canon are in the first 3 volumes of the Sutta Pitaka, of the Pali Canon, seem to be fairly faithfully recorded. I believe that it's not all faithfully recorded, that the suttas, that there are some suttas that are probably apocryphal, added later. And how we can tell those is as the sutta goes into the fantastic, then the reality factor drops low, in my opinion. So the overall picture of the Buddha is that he's not sitting for days on end in meditation, that he, in fact, most of the time he's meditating lying down. So the story of the Buddha is not about him, being a breatharian, living on no food at all for a long period of time. Not like that, but he doesn't really come forward to being a recognized enlightened person until he's, I think, 36 or 37 years old. Excuse me, I think Jesus is 27 or 28.
Let me interject a comment here. He never actually claimed to be enlightened. In fact, he stood up one time and said that he wasn't a Buddha and that he only had the development of a Rinpoche, and that it would take 6 years before he was actually able to have the energy of Buddha. That was 3 months after he started doing his meditation.
Well, that's very nice, but he has people telling people that he's enlightened.
Unfortunately.
Right? When you have a road show that's following you around, calling you enlightened, for instance, people say that the Dalai Lama is a really humble guy, but on his letterhead it says His Holiness. Right? Well, to me, His Holiness is kind of over the top. And he's in control of his letterhead. It says His Holiness because he allows it to be said that. So the same thing with the boy. He's got an entourage of people who are hanging out with him, who are marketing him as the next Buddha. So why do we have to feel that a 15-year-old contemplative is the Buddha? There are a lot of rigorous contemplatives around the world who manifest the fruit of the contemplative life, which is out-of-body experiences, altered states of consciousness, Kundalini, right, and that kind of stuff. I didn't see anything in this so far, this description of this kid's experience, that adds to that thing that, I have out-of-body experiences, I have altered states of consciousness, and I have Kundalini experiences. So you're about to add something to this.
Yes, that's what I'm doing.
Because you've been studying this young man, and I haven't.
I find him very inspiring personally. His dedication to the art of meditation. He did make one comment once, although he rarely speaks. Mostly he spends his time in meditation, 23, 24 hours a day, whatever it is. Or so they say. I won't call that a fact. He did comment once in one of his lectures that his meditation separated him from his body. That's a direct quote from him. And you can continue to speak in whatever way.
Well, that could infer an out-of-body experience, but it need not. Not that an out-of-body experience is necessarily a requirement of enlightenment, but the Buddha, Patanjali, Teresa of Avila, those three mystics I know, described out-of-body experiences. Now, they had different names for those experiences, but when we look at their description, we know they're talking about an out-of-body experience. And to me, the out-of-body experience is part of the characteristics of an enlightened being. Just being able to sit still for long hours at a time
could mean you're in a coma, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's no proof that the person's enlightened. Let's see what is his teaching. So far, all I've seen is the kids sitting still for a long period of time, which could all too easily be manipulated on the film. A classic example of the chicanery that goes on in marketing an enlightened being is HR, the guy who's the sun gazer, and he supposedly fasted for a year and a half, and at the end of his fast, he actually had gained weight.
Interesting.
Okay, thank you.